It was a night like no other. A thick veil of mystery hung in the air, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Rain drizzled down on cobblestone streets, gleaming under the flickering glow of streetlights. You could hear the faint hum of life winding down, a few late-night stragglers clutching umbrellas as they hurried home. But behind this seemingly ordinary night, something extraordinary was about to unfold. A story so puzzling, it would leave even the sharpest minds scratching their heads. This is the tale of the heist that wasn't, and trust me, you won't believe what happens next. Our story begins in the heart of the bustling city, inside an unassuming coffee shop tucked between towering office buildings. It's the kind of place you'd walk past 100 times without noticing. But tonight, this quiet little cafe was where fate would draw together a group of strangers, all bound by one inexplicable event. Meet Detective Claire Morgan, a sharp, no-nonsense investigator with a knack for untangling the impossible. Claire was known for her laser focus and unflappable demeanor, but tonight, she was on edge, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly as her mind raced with unanswered questions. Across from her sat Logan, a tech-savvy private eye with a scruffy beard and an endless supply of snarky remarks. They made an odd pair, but when things got weird, they somehow always ended up on the same case. "So, what's the angle?" Logan asked, leaning back in his chair with a smirk. "A big-shot heist with no loot? Sounds more like a prank than a crime." Claire didn't look up, her eyes fixed on the ripples in her coffee. "It's not just about what's missing, Logan. It's about what isn't missing. The vault was untouched, no alarms triggered, no signs of entry, and yet someone was there." Logan raised an eyebrow. "Creepy. Like a ghost heist?" Claire finally looked at him, her piercing green eyes narrowing. "Whatever it wasn't a ghost. But it doesn't add up. The surveillance footage shows nothing, not a single blip. It's like whoever, or whatever, was there erased themselves completely." Now, let me tell you about the vault in question. It wasn't your ordinary bank safe. This was the Apex Security Facility, a fortress designed to withstand anything short of an apocalypse. Housing priceless artifacts, high-profile secrets, and more cash than you could count, it was the epitome of impenetrable. Yet when the night guards did their routine sweep, they found the vault door slightly ajar. Not wide open, mind you, just enough to make your stomach drop. Inside, everything was in place. Not a dollar, not a jewel, not even a speck of dust out of place. But there was something, someone, that had left behind a chilling reminder they had been there. A single black glove, perfectly laid out on the cold steel floor. The media caught wind of it, of course. They dubbed it the heist that wasn't, and the story spread like wildfire. Speculations ran wild. Was it an inside job? A hoax? Some bizarre art project? Everyone had a theory, but no one had answers. Claire and Logan were roped into the case by a desperate call from the facility's owner, a man named Victor Harrington. He was the kind of billionaire who didn't just want problems solved, he wanted them erased. And he wanted it done yesterday. Victor was sweating bullets when they met him in his lavish penthouse, pacing like a caged animal. This can't get out," he stammered, his polished demeanor cracking. "You understand? If word gets around that my security can be breached, I'll lose everything." Claire wasn't one for coddling fragile egos. "It's already out, Mr. Harrington. Our job isn't to keep your secrets, it's to find out who's behind this." Logan chimed in with a smirk. "And maybe how they pulled off the cleanest crime in history. Seriously, not even a smudge on the door? I'm impressed." But this wasn't just about one strange night at a high-security vault. As Claire and Logan dug deeper, they uncovered a trail of breadcrumbs leading to something far more sinister. Witnesses started coming forward with eerie accounts. Lights flickering in their homes, shadows moving where none should be, and a strange sense of being watched. And then there were the calls. Anonymous tips from someone who always seemed to know just a little too much. A voice distorted beyond recognition, whispering riddles that sent chills down their spines. "You think this is just about the glove?" Claire muttered to Logan as they sifted through stacks of files in their makeshift office. "There's something bigger here, something we're not seeing." Logan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Bigger than an invisible thief? Great. Can't wait." Then, just as they were starting to piece together the first slivers of the puzzle, something happened that neither of them could explain. Their computer screens flickered, the lights dimmed, and a single message appeared on the monitor in bold red text: "Stop digging." And that was it. No trace of where it came from, no clues to who sent it. Just a warning, or a threat, that left Claire and Logan staring at each other in stunned silence. Who or what was trying to keep them away? And why? And that, my friends, is where our story begins. Buckle up, because the answers are out there, hidden in the shadows of a mystery that defies explanation. Will Claire and Logan crack the case? Or are they about to uncover something they were never meant to find? The room felt unnaturally cold as the message lingered on the screen, its ominous glow cutting through the dim light. Claire's jaw tightened, her mind racing to make sense of it. Logan leaned closer, squinting at the screen like it might suddenly reveal its secrets. "Okay," he said, his voice tinged with nervous humor. "So either we're dealing with a very tech-savvy prankster, or I just added hacker ghost to my list of career hazards." Claire shot him a look, her expression dead serious. "This isn't a joke, Logan. Someone's watching us. Someone who knows we're getting close." She stood abruptly, pacing the small office as she tried to shake off the uneasy feeling crawling up her spine. Whoever it is, they're trying to scare us off. And it's working. Almost. Logan tilted his head, his trademark smirk fading. "You think this is tied to the heist?" Claire stopped pacing and turned to him, her arms crossed. "I don't think it's a coincidence. This case is different. The glove, the lack of evidence, and now this. It's like they're playing a game, leaving just enough breadcrumbs to keep us chasing, but not enough to figure out why." Logan tapped a pen against the desk, his brow furrowing. "Okay, but let's say this is connected. What's the motive? Why break into the most secure vault in the city, leave it untouched, and then warn us to back off? It's like they wanted us to know they were there, but not. Why?" That question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. Claire hated not knowing, hated being one step behind. She ran a hand through her dark hair, her frustration barely contained. "We need to dig deeper. Whoever sent that message isn't going to make it easy, but there's always a trail. We just have to find it." Logan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Right? Because poking the bear has worked out so well for us so far." As they regrouped, the city outside continued its usual hum of life, blissfully unaware of the strange game unfolding in the shadows. The Apex security facility, now swarming with guards and investigators, remained the epicenter of the mystery. But Claire and Logan knew they wouldn't find answers in the obvious places. Whoever, or whatever, they were dealing with was too smart for that. Their first stop was a visit to a man named Marcus Vance, a former Apex security consultant, and someone who had worked on the vault's design. Claire had pulled his name from a dusty file buried in the facility's archives, a hunch telling her he might know something no one else did. Marcus lived on the outskirts of the city, in a cluttered apartment that smelled faintly of stale coffee and machine oil. He greeted them with a wary look, his wiry frame tense as he motioned them inside. "So, what's this about?" Marcus asked, his voice gravelly and tired. He didn't bother hiding the suspicion in his eyes as he gestured for them to sit. "You don't seem like the usual corporate types Apex sends to harass me." Claire got straight to the point. "We're investigating the recent breach at Apex. We need to know if there's anything about the vault's design that could explain what happened." Marcus's expression darkened, and he let out a bitter laugh. "The vault's design? Lady, that thing's as secure as it gets. I made sure of it. But if someone got in without tripping a single alarm, then they're either a genius or they've got access to tech that shouldn't exist." Logan leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of tech are we talking about? Like advanced hacking or something else?" Marcus hesitated, his fingers twitching slightly as he considered his words. "Look, I don't know who you're chasing, but there were rumors back when I worked at Apex. Projects they didn't want anyone knowing about. Stuff that went way beyond high-tech locks and cameras. Experimental, borderline illegal. They kept it quiet, but I heard whispers about devices that could manipulate perception." "Perception?" Claire echoed, her skepticism clear. Marcus nodded grimly. "Think about it. What if someone could make you see what they wanted you to see? Or not see anything at all? If that kind of tech exists, and I'm not saying it does, it'd make breaking into a vault child's play." The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled in. Claire didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were starting to fit in a way that made her uneasy. Logan broke the silence with a low whistle. Well, that's not terrifying at all. So we're chasing someone with potential mind-bending gadgets. Fantastic. Marcus leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. If I were you, I'd walk away. Whoever's behind this, they don't play by the same rules. You keep digging, and you're going to find yourself in a world of trouble. Claire met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. Trouble's part of the job. Thanks for your time, Marcus. As they left his apartment, the rain had started again, a steady drizzle that mirrored the storm brewing in Claire's mind. Logan stuffed his hands into his coat pockets, his usual humor replaced with a rare seriousness. So, what's the plan now, boss? We keep chasing this invisible phantom, or do we take Marcus's advice and cut our losses? Claire didn't answer right away, her eyes fixed on the shimmering city lights in the distance. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. We keep going. Someone's pulling the strings, and I'm not stopping until I find out who. Their next move was to revisit the Apex facility, this time focusing on the people who worked there. If someone had access to experimental tech, they needed to know who might have been involved. The night shift supervisor, a jittery man named Ethan, was reluctant to talk at first, but eventually cracked under Claire's intense questioning. There's this guy, Ethan stammered, his eyes darting nervously. He used to work here, real quiet, kept to himself. Name was Jackson. He got fired months ago, but he was always tinkering with stuff in the labs. I don't know what he was working on, but it was weird. Like sci-fi weird. Logan raised an eyebrow. You've been holding out on us, Ethan. Where can we find this Jackson? Ethan shook his head, his fear palpable. I don't know. He just disappeared after he got fired. No one's seen him since. But if he's involved in this, you didn't hear it from me, okay? As they left the facility, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that they were getting closer to something big. But with every step forward, the stakes seemed to rise. Who was Jackson, and what had he been working on? And more importantly, why did it feel like they were being watched every step of the way? The rain continued to fall as they drove through the city, the glow of streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. The tension in the car was thick, both of them lost in their thoughts. But neither of them could shake the feeling that the message on their screen wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. A promise that the deeper they went, the more dangerous this game would become. The night stretched on as Claire and Logan drove through the winding streets of the city, the faint hum of the car engine blending with the rhythmic patter of rain on the windshield. Each passing moment seemed to pull them deeper into the web of uncertainty. Neither of them spoke for a while, but the silence wasn't empty. It was charged, heavy with unspoken fears and questions they weren't ready to voice yet. Logan finally broke the silence, his voice low but tinged with curiosity. You think this Jackson guy is our missing piece? I mean, if he had access to this so-called tech Marcus hinted at, it could explain a lot. Claire kept her eyes on the road, her grip on the wheel tight. Maybe. Or maybe he's just another ghost we're chasing. But we don't have the luxury of ignoring leads, no matter how thin they are. Fair point, Logan muttered, leaning his head back against the seat. Still, feels like we're diving headfirst into a rabbit hole, and I'm not sure we'll like what's at the bottom. Claire didn't respond. Her mind was already racing ahead, trying to piece together fragments of information that refused to fit neatly. Jackson's name had come up too many times to ignore, but finding him felt like chasing a shadow. And that message, "Stop digging," loomed in the back of her mind like a warning she couldn't shake. The trail led them to a run-down part of the city, where flickering neon signs cast eerie reflections on puddles scattered across the uneven streets. This was the kind of neighborhood where secrets stayed buried and everyone looked the other way. Their destination was a cramped apartment complex with peeling paint and dimly lit hallways. According to a shaky lead from Ethan, Jackson had been spotted here a few weeks ago. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Claire knocked on the door of apartment 3B, her movements firm and deliberate. There was no response. She exchanged a glance with Logan, who shrugged before reaching into his pocket to pull out a small lockpicking kit. You know, he said with a smirk, breaking and entering wasn't in the job description, but I've always been a quick learner. Just do it, Claire snapped, her patience wearing thin. It took Logan less than a minute to pick the lock, and the door creaked open to reveal a dark, cluttered apartment. The air was thick with the smell of stale food and something metallic like rust or old machinery. They stepped inside cautiously, their flashlights slicing through the gloom. The place was a mess, but not the kind of mess that came from carelessness. It was deliberate, almost calculated, papers scattered across a desk, strange blueprints pinned to the walls, and a series of monitors stacked in the corner, their screens dark but covered in smudged fingerprints. This wasn't just an apartment. It was a workspace, maybe even a lab. "Looks like our guy was busy," Logan murmured, picking up a blueprint and squinting at it. "What the hell is this? Some kind of emitter?" Claire moved to the desk, scanning the papers. Most of it was gibberish, complex equations and diagrams that meant nothing to her. But one thing stood out: a notebook with a list of names, each one crossed out except for a single entry at the bottom. Her stomach tightened when she saw it. "Victor Harrington," she read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Logan's eyebrows shot up. "Harrington? As in Mr. Erase This from History Harrington? That can't be a coincidence." "No, it can't," Claire agreed, her mind racing. Why was Harrington's name on this list? And what did it mean that he was the only one not crossed out? Before she could dig deeper, a sound from the hallway froze them both in place. A faint creak of floorboards, barely audible over the rain outside. Claire motioned for Logan to stay quiet as she crept toward the door, her hand instinctively reaching for the small pistol she kept holstered at her side. The hallway was empty when she peeked out, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there, watching them. She stepped back inside and locked the door. "Looks like we're not the only ones interested in Jackson's little science project," Logan said, his voice low. "Think it's our friendly hacker?" "Maybe," Claire replied, though she wasn't convinced. Whoever they were dealing with, they were playing a game of cat and mouse, and Claire wasn't sure who was who anymore. Back in the apartment, Logan powered up one of the monitors, the screen flickering to life with a soft hum. What appeared was a jumbled mess of code and fragmented video feeds. Logan's fingers flew over the keyboard as he tried to make sense of it. "This guy's encryption is insane," he muttered. "But wait a second. Here." He managed to pull up a grainy video file, the timestamp indicating it was recorded 2 nights ago. The footage showed a shadowy figure entering the Apex facility. Their face was obscured, and their movements were unnervingly precise, almost mechanical. "There," Logan said, pointing to the screen. "That's our ghost, but how are they not triggering any alarms?" Claire watched intently, her gut telling her there was something off about the way the figure moved, like they were more machine than human. "Pause it," she said suddenly. Logan froze the video, and Claire leaned in, studying the faint outline of a device strapped to the figure's wrist. "That's not just a watch," she muttered. "It's some kind of device. Maybe it's how they're bypassing security." Logan frowned. "You think Jackson built it?" "Who else would?" Claire replied. "And if he did, that means he's either working with them or they stole it from him. Either way, we need to find him before they do." Before they could dig further, the monitor suddenly went dark, the screen flickering with static, before displaying a single word: "Leave." Claire's blood ran cold. It wasn't just a warning, it was a command. Whoever they were dealing with wasn't just watching. They were pulling the strings, controlling the narrative at every turn. But Claire wasn't the type to back down. Not now. Not ever. "We're in over our heads," Logan muttered, his usual bravado replaced with genuine concern. "Whoever this is, they've got eyes everywhere. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe we should walk away." Claire looked at him, her expression hard and unyielding. "If we walk away, they win. And if they're willing to go to these lengths to keep us in the dark, then whatever they're hiding is worth knowing." Logan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine. But next time a computer screen starts yelling at us, I'm out." As they left the apartment, the rain had turned into a full-blown downpour, the city's streets shimmering under the relentless assault. The tension between them was palpable, but beneath it was a shared determination. The deeper they went, the more dangerous the game became, but neither of them was ready to quit. Not yet. The city felt different now. the air thick with unease as Claire and Logan made their way through the rain-slick streets. Every step felt like it was drawing them closer to something they weren't ready for. Their search for Jackson had taken them to the edge of a mystery that seemed to stretch endlessly into the unknown. But the closer they got to the heart of it, the more they felt the weight of invisible eyes watching their every move. "We're being followed," Claire muttered, her voice steady, but with an edge that told Logan she knew something wasn't right. She had been scanning the street for the last few blocks, her instincts prickling. Logan's eyes darted to the rearview mirror of their car, his hand instinctively resting on the door handle. "Yeah, I feel it too. There's a black sedan behind us, been tailing us for the last 5 minutes. You think it's the same people who sent that message?" Claire didn't answer at first, her grip tightening on the steering wheel. Every muscle in her body was on high alert. This wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a declaration. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to scare them off. They were trying to trap them. She could almost feel it in the air, the growing sense of inevitability. "We're not stopping," she said, her voice clipped. "Not until we find Jackson." Logan glanced at her, his face a mixture of concern and admiration. "You're really going through with this? Huh? No turning back?" "There's no turning back now." Claire's voice was firm. "We've already walked into this mess, Logan. Might as well finish it." They turned into a narrow alley, hoping to shake the tail, but the sedan followed them, its headlights flashing ominously in the rearview. The tension in the car was suffocating. Claire's heart beat faster with each second that passed. What were they going to find when they finally cornered Jackson? Was he the key to this madness, or just another pawn in a much bigger game? The alley grew darker as they drove deeper into the forgotten part of the city. Their headlights revealed only shadows, twisted shapes that seemed to mock their every move. Suddenly, without warning, the sedan pulled up right behind them and blocked their way. Claire slammed on the brakes, her eyes widening as the car's engine roared, a loud rev echoing in the narrow space. Before she could react, the driver's side door of the sedan opened. A figure emerged, dressed in black, moving with the kind of purpose that only came from being in complete control. Logan cursed under his breath. "This isn't good." Claire's hand hovered near her gun, her fingers trembling slightly. The figure approached, and for the first time since this whole thing began, she felt a real primal fear. Fear of what might happen next. "Stay calm," she whispered to Logan, her voice tight. The figure stopped just a few feet from the car, their face hidden in shadow. Claire could feel the pressure mounting, the seconds stretching into what felt like hours. The silence was deafening. The figure finally spoke, their voice low and controlled, sending a chill down Claire's spine. "You shouldn't have come here," they said, their tone flat, almost disappointed. "You've crossed a line." Claire didn't flinch. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure didn't answer immediately, their eyes scanning the car as if weighing their next move. "What do I want?" "Oh, I think you know. You've been digging into things that were never meant to be unearthed." Their voice grew colder, and Claire felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "You think you're in control of this investigation? You're nothing but a pawn in a much larger game. You've already lost." Claire's pulse raced. The words didn't just scare her, they pissed her off. "Is that supposed to intimidate me? Because it's not working." The figure chuckled, a low sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "You're not the one in control here. You never were." And with that, the figure stepped back, disappearing into the shadows of the alleyway as quickly as they had appeared. For a moment, the world felt suspended in time. Claire's breathing came in shallow bursts, her mind racing with 1,000 questions she didn't have the answers to. Who were they? And why were they trying to scare her off? Logan exhaled slowly, breaking the silence. That's not good." Claire didn't answer. She was too busy looking at the space where the figure had disappeared, trying to make sense of what just happened. There had been no threats, no physical force, just words. And yet, those words had cut deeper than anything else she had encountered in this case. They were right about one thing. This wasn't just about a heist. It was about something much bigger. But what? "Let's keep going," she said finally, her voice cold and resolute. "We can't back down now." They continued driving, the road feeling more treacherous with every mile. The sense of being hunted didn't go away. If anything, it intensified. And then, as if on cue, Logan's phone buzzed with a new message. Claire glanced at him quickly, her pulse quickening when she saw the subject line. "You've been warned." The message was simple, with no other text, just a single image attached. Claire leaned forward, her breath catching in her throat when she saw it. A grainy, black and white photograph of Jackson, his face obscured by a mask, standing outside the Apex facility. But there was something else. An ominous figure in the background, watching him. The figure was barely visible, but its presence was unmistakable. "They're watching us," Logan said, his voice shaky as he stared at the image. "And Jackson's not safe." Claire's thoughts swirled as the pieces of the puzzle seemed to shift once again. Jackson was no longer just a suspect, he was a target. Someone was pulling the strings, and they weren't just after Claire and Logan anymore. They were after anyone who had even a passing connection to this tangled mess. Claire's mind raced with the implications. Whoever this was, they weren't just playing games. They were making moves, tightening the net around everyone involved. They weren't just trying to hide the truth. They were trying to destroy anyone who got too close to it. With Jackson's life hanging in the balance, Claire knew the stakes had never been higher. They were no longer chasing shadows, they were running from them, and time was running out. But with every step, the darkness only seemed to grow thicker. Was there any way out of this? Would they find Jackson before it was too late, or were they too far gone to escape the web closing in around them? The tension was unbearable, and the worst part? Neither of them knew how it would all end. But one thing was certain, whatever happened next, they were going to have to face it together. The air inside the car grew heavier with every passing minute, suffocating them both as they drove deeper into the city's outskirts. Claire's eyes were locked on the road ahead, but her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one more unsettling than the last. The image of Jackson in that photo, his face barely visible beneath the mask, kept flashing in her mind. And the figure behind him, the one lurking in the shadows. Whoever they were, they knew something. Something that they didn't. Logan's phone buzzed again, jolting Claire from her thoughts. She glanced over, her stomach dropping when she saw the message. Another photo, this time much clearer. It was a shot of her and Logan, taken from a distance. They were outside the apartment complex they had just raided. Someone had been watching them. Someone who had access to cameras, to information, to places they shouldn't have been. "This is bad," Logan said quietly, his voice tense as he stared at the screen. "Whoever is behind this knows everything about us. They're always one step ahead." Claire's pulse quickened, and for a moment, she felt the weight of the situation press down on her chest. It wasn't just about Jackson anymore. It was about something much bigger, something far more dangerous. She had always known there were forces in play far beyond her understanding, but now they were closing in fast. Then, as if to confirm their worst fears, Logan's phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't just a photo, it was a video. He opened it, and Claire felt her breath catch in her throat when the screen came to life. The video was shaky at first, then steady, showing the inside of a dimly lit room. A chair was at the center, and a man was sitting in it, his back to the camera. Claire's stomach churned when she realized who it was. It was Marcus, but something was wrong. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced with a look of desperation. His hands were bound to the arms of the chair, and there were bruises on his face. The message that followed hit them both like a punch to the gut. "Time's running out. Jackson is the key. Find him. But know this, if you do, Marcus dies." The video cut off abruptly, leaving an unbearable silence between them. Claire's heart raced, the blood rushing in her ears. Marcus was alive, but barely. And now they had a choice. Continue their search for Jackson and risk Marcus's life, or walk away and let whoever was behind this get away with whatever they were planning. Her thoughts raced. They had no idea who was holding Marcus, or why they were making such an elaborate game out of it. What were they trying to accomplish? Why keep Marcus alive, but in such a state? And what did Jackson have to do with it? Damn it! Logan's voice cracked as he slammed his fist against the dashboard, his frustration palpable. This is all connected. I can feel it. Everything points to Jackson, but why the hell would they be keeping Marcus alive? Claire exhaled sharply, her mind scrambling for answers. It's not just about Marcus. It's about what he knows. He's been involved in this from the start, Logan. If they're holding him, they're holding on to something we don't understand. Something we need to find Jackson. Logan was quiet for a moment, his gaze flicking to the road, his fingers tapping nervously against the seat. So, we keep going. We find Jackson, and we get Marcus out. But if we don't, what happens to him? The question hung in the air, unanswered, like a dagger poised to strike. Claire's jaw tightened. There was no easy choice, no clear path forward. The stakes had never been higher. Marcus's life was on the line, and yet they were still in the dark, stumbling through a labyrinth of lies, half-truths, and hidden motives. Just then, the familiar buzz of a new notification broke through the tension. Another message. Claire hesitated before opening it, but she had no choice. She had to know who was watching them now. The message was short, almost too cryptic. The clock's ticking. Your time's almost up. There was no name, no explanation, just a countdown. At the top of the message, a digital clock had started ticking down from 2 hours. Every second was a reminder that they didn't have much time. They had no idea where Marcus was being held, and Jackson was still out there somewhere, a ghost in the machine. Every twist of this nightmare made them question everything they thought they knew. Was Jackson even the person they were supposed to be finding? Was he the key to the whole thing? Or just another player in a much larger, more dangerous game? Claire slammed her fist against the steering wheel, frustration bubbling to the surface. We can't keep chasing shadows like this. We need answers, now. Logan looked at her, his expression grim. We don't even know where to start. They sat there for a long moment, staring out into the rain-soaked night, their thoughts racing but their options few. Then, almost as if an answer to their despair, Claire's phone buzzed once again. It was from Marcus. The message was simple, just a few words. Follow the signal. Find the door. Claire felt a flicker of hope, though it was quickly dampened by the realization that this was yet another puzzle, another piece of the mystery that could lead them deeper into danger. Follow the signal? She muttered under her breath, trying to make sense of it. What did it mean? And where would it lead them? Logan turned to her, his face etched with the same uncertainty she felt. You think it's a trap? Claire shook her head, her eyes narrowing. No, I think Marcus is trying to help us. But what if it's a test, a final push to see if we're really willing to go all the way? Everything was moving too fast. The pieces of the puzzle were shifting, twisting, and just when they thought they were close to the answer, the ground slipped from beneath them. The video, the countdown, the cryptic message, everything pointed to one thing, Jackson. But why was he the key? Why were they so desperate to stop them from finding him? Claire glanced at Logan, the weight of their choices pressing down on her. We have 2 hours, Logan. 2 hours to figure this out. And after that, I don't know, but I won't stop until we get answers. Logan nodded, his jaw set, determination in his eyes. Let's find Jackson. But as the clock ticked on, both Claire and Logan knew this wasn't just about finding Jackson anymore. It was about surviving what was coming next. And whatever was waiting for them, it was going to change everything. The rain poured harder as Claire and Logan raced against the ticking clock. They followed the coordinates Marcus had sent them, the cryptic message pushing them deeper into the heart of the city's industrial district. Every street they passed seemed unfamiliar, every alley darker than the last. The fear of being watched, of walking into a trap, gnawed at Claire, but she pushed it down. They were so close now, closer than they'd ever been. Logan was driving fast, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. We're almost there, he muttered, eyes flicking from the GPS to the road ahead. Claire didn't answer. She was too focused on the map, tracing the path to the abandoned warehouse they were headed to. Marcus had warned them that this was where it all would come together, where the truth would finally be laid bare. Or so she hoped. As they neared the location, Claire's phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. It's all connected. Trust no one. Time's almost up. Her heart pounded in her chest. Every word was a reminder of how little time they had. But something about the message, the urgency in it, felt different this time. Claire's instincts flared. Something was wrong. This wasn't just about Jackson anymore. There was something far bigger at play here, and she feared they were walking straight into the heart of it. They pulled up to the warehouse, the large metal door looming in front of them. its silhouette barely visible through the rain and fog. Claire's throat tightened. This was it, the moment they had been racing toward. Whatever they were about to uncover, it would change everything. They stepped out of the car, the chill of the night air biting at their skin. Claire's gun was in her hand, her fingers tightly wrapped around it. Logan was right behind her, his face hard with determination. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the silence as they approached the massive door. Claire was the first to reach it, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement. Suddenly, the door creaked open, just wide enough for them to slip through. A dark figure stood on the other side, his face hidden in shadows. Claire's heart skipped a beat as she raised her gun, instinctively ready to fight. But the figure didn't move, didn't speak. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. The figure slowly stepped forward, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I see you've made it this far. Impressive." Claire's pulse quickened. There was something about the voice. It sounded too familiar. She squinted, trying to make out the person's features in the dim light. Then it hit her. No. Her voice faltered, her breath catching in her throat. "It can't be. It's you." Standing before them, calm as ever, was Jackson. But this wasn't the man they had been searching for. His eyes were cold, calculating, and his smile, deceptive, sinister. "Surprised?" Jackson said, his voice laced with amusement. "You shouldn't be. This whole thing, it was never about the heist. It was about who was watching, who was pulling the strings." Claire felt like the ground beneath her had vanished. Everything they had believed, everything they had chased, was now unraveling in front of her. You were behind all of this? The heist, the messages, Marcus, everything?" Jackson's smile widened. "Oh, Claire, you think you're the one investigating this? No. You've been part of the plan all along. You've been running in circles while I've been leading you straight to the truth." Logan stepped forward, his voice low, trembling with anger. "This is a game to you, isn't it? We risked everything for you." Jackson chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "You still don't get it, do you? You think I was the one in danger? You were the ones being played, all of you. The heist? That was just a distraction, a way to draw attention. The real prize wasn't money, it was control." The words sank in like daggers, each one digging deeper into the mystery they had thought they were solving. "Control?" Claire whispered, feeling a mix of fury and disbelief. "What are you talking about?" Jackson took a step closer, his eyes cold, calculating. "I orchestrated everything. From the fake heists to the false leads to Marcus's capture. I knew you'd come for him. I knew you'd follow the breadcrumbs. And now you've walked right into my trap." Claire's mind spun as the weight of his words hit her. "Why, Jackson? Why drag us into this? What did we ever do to you?" He laughed, the sound hollow, echoing in the warehouse. "You didn't do anything. It was never personal. It was about power. And you just made it all too easy." Logan's eyes flicked to Claire, his face a mask of confusion and anger. "Then what do you want from us? Why are we here?" Jackson's gaze shifted to the back of the warehouse, where a dim light flickered. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, pressing a button on it. The moment he did, the flickering light grew steady, illuminating a large screen on the far wall. It buzzed to life, and Claire's breath caught in her throat as she saw what was displayed. It was a live feed. But what was truly shocking was the view. It showed Marcus, alive but in a cage, bound and bruised, his face pale, and behind him, standing in the shadows, was someone else, someone she had never expected to see again. Her heart stopped. No, it can't be. The figure in the shadows stepped forward, revealing their face. It was the one person Claire had never suspected, the one person who had been guiding her all along. Detective Simon Rios. He was the one who had been feeding her information. He was the one who had seemed so helpful, so trustworthy. But now his expression was unreadable, his cold eyes locked on her as if he knew exactly what was coming next. "Surprised?" Simon asked, his voice laced with calm malice. "The game has only just begun, Claire. You've been a pawn all along, just like everyone else." The revelation hit her like a freight train. Simon, the man she thought she could trust, had been the mastermind behind the entire operation. He had used her, manipulated her every step of the way, and now they were both standing in his trap. Logan's voice trembled with disbelief. "You were in on this from the start?" Simon smiled darkly, his eyes never leaving Claire. You should have known better than to trust anyone, Claire. You weren't meant to solve the mystery. You were meant to be a part of it. As the realization sank in, Claire's thoughts raced. Jackson, Simon, the heist. It was all connected. But what now? What could she do? Her mind was still reeling when she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She whipped around, only to find herself face to face with another shadowed figure, a third player in the game. And this time, there was no way out. The figure behind Claire stepped forward, and the air seemed to freeze. Claire's heart raced, her thoughts swirling in a chaotic storm. She had already discovered more than she'd ever wanted to know, but now there was one last piece of the puzzle. Who was this new player? And what was left to uncover? The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing their face. Claire's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the man standing before them. It was someone she had seen only in passing, someone who had never been on her radar, until now. Detective Rios turned slowly, a smirk on his face, his eyes glinting with something darker. Ah, there it is, the moment of realization. You? Claire whispered, the disbelief choking her. You're the one behind all of this? Rios nodded, his expression unreadable. You've been chasing shadows, Claire. Every clue, every message, it was all part of the plan. The heist wasn't just a robbery. It was a distraction, a test, a way to pull you into this web, to make sure you'd come this far. Logan stepped forward, his voice tight with anger. Why? What do you want from us? What's your endgame? Rios' smile widened. Endgame? There's no endgame, Logan. This is just the beginning of a new world. A world where people like me control the narrative, pull the strings. And you two? You were just pawns in my little chess match. But don't worry, it's all over now. Claire's mind raced. Every part of her wanted to believe that this was all a twisted joke, that somehow there was still something redeemable about Rios. But deep down, she knew that this was real. This was the culmination of everything they had been running toward. Rios had orchestrated it all. The heist, the chase, the false leads. And now, he had them cornered, trapped in a game they couldn't win. You think you can control everything? Claire spat, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. You think you've won? Rios' eyes flicked over to Jackson, who had remained eerily silent throughout the exchange. Jackson's gaze was cold, calculating, and as he stepped forward, Claire realized just how much had been hidden in plain sight. You should have seen it earlier, Claire, Jackson said softly, his voice cold. Rios and I, we were working together the whole time. The heist? The information? All of it. It was never about Marcus. It was never about finding Jackson. It was about something bigger than all of us. Logan's eyes flicked between Jackson and Rios. You two planned all of this? Jackson nodded. I was never the target. You were. From the moment you started chasing the clues, you were a part of something much bigger. A message to the world, a warning. Claire's mind reeled. This was bigger than anything she could have imagined. They hadn't just been investigating a heist, they had been investigating a plan, a conspiracy that stretched far beyond what she'd ever anticipated. And now, standing in front of her, was the mastermind behind it all, the twisted puppet master pulling every string. But even as the realization hit her, a surge of defiance welled up inside Claire. She wasn't going to let Rios win. Not like this. Not after everything they'd been through. She had to do something. Anything. You're wrong, Rios, Claire said, her voice steadying as she raised her chin. This isn't over. Not yet. You've made a mistake, believing that you're the one in control. Rios' smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, Claire saw the crack in his armor. She saw the fear, but it was fleeting, gone as quickly as it had appeared. Really? Rios said, his voice laced with sarcasm. And what exactly do you think you can do, Claire? You're already too late. Claire didn't respond immediately. She was calculating, thinking fast. She could feel the weight of the gun in her hand, but there was something more important than violence now. She had to outsmart him. The countdown was ticking, but in the stillness of the warehouse, every second felt like an eternity. Then it hit her. The one thing Rios hadn't anticipated. The one thing he had overlooked in his careful planning. She pulled out her phone, quickly typing a message to Logan. He glanced at it, his eyes widening as he understood what she was planning. They had no time to waste, but there was still a chance to turn the tables. What's going on, Claire? Logan asked, his voice barely a whisper. Trust me, she said. Just stay with me. Before Rios could react, Claire pressed the button on her phone. A loud buzzing sound filled the air, and Rios's face went pale as he realized what was happening. The live feed on the wall flickered once, twice, and then went black. Claire had triggered the security system, the one thing that had been overlooked in the chaos of the last few hours. "You thought you controlled the game?" Claire said, her voice rising with confidence. "But you didn't. Not really." Rios's face twisted with rage as he scrambled for his phone, but it was too late. The authorities were already on their way. The system Claire had hacked into would alert the right people, people who would bring Rios's empire crashing down. "You're done," Claire said softly, though her heart was still racing. This was never about winning, Rios. It was about exposing you for who you are. Rios's smug expression disappeared as his world started to unravel. In that moment, Claire realized something crucial. The real victory wasn't in catching him or stopping his plan. It was in surviving the truth. As the sound of sirens grew louder, Claire turned to Logan. They didn't need to say anything. The fight was over. For now, they had won. But the weight of what they'd uncovered would stay with them forever. The layers of deceit, the manipulation, the lies. It was all a reminder that sometimes the truth was even darker than the mystery itself. And while they had put an end to Rios's plans, Claire knew one thing for sure. This wouldn't be the last time they would face something like this. The world was full of secrets, and they were just getting started. As the door to the warehouse opened, flooding the space with the red and blue lights of approaching law enforcement, Claire took one last look at Rios. His cold, defeated eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, she saw something in him: fear. But it wasn't enough to change the outcome. With the storm still raging outside, Claire and Logan walked into the night, knowing that while one chapter had closed, the story was far from over. The mysteries of the world were vast, and as they had just learned, sometimes the real heist was the truth hidden right in front of them.